Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shamika, and we are here at the Being Bipolar podcast. Dun, 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 dun. And
Ow.
this is episode four, technically, but really, this is episode one because we have rebranded. There were some things that we needed to take care of business wise. And so, if you can see, we have changed everything about our brand. And we are so excited to have you back here for this conversation. And today, of course, I have my beautiful, beautiful, beautiful co-host, Anais. Hey,
Hey y'all.
and Anais is a amazing makeup artist, educator. She is just everything. And at the end, we'll make sure to give you her contact information because you need to be linked with her. Okay?
Let's get it.
So this episode is highly requested. It's highly requested because ever since I began to talk about my journey with bipolar disorder, there have been so many conversations about, okay, well, how do you maintain a relationship and you're bipolar? Um, I have been with my wife over 10 years, and I would say that it is necessary to understand how to care for somebody
Yeah.
who has bipolar disorder, and or any mental diagnosis. I'm not just going to say bipolar because I believe that knowing how to navigate through how to deal with somebody with depression or anxiety, those are all things that are very important. And so in this conversation, I really want to navigate through what that looks like, not just from our perspective, right?
Right.
Or my perspective, because you also have the perspective of at some point you were in a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and then now you're not.
Right.
So how that looks for you. So we're going to kind of talk about that. We do have a special guest. My wife Chanel is joining us today. But before that, I just want to kind of talk about for me, and then I also want to go to you, Anais, and kind of talk about for you. But for me, how important it was that I had someone to support me.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that something was wrong until my wife said, something's going on.
Mm.
And for those of you who don't know, I was married before, and after that, situation, there were a lot of emotions internally that I went through because I also hadn't really grieved the loss of my mother at that time as well. And so I feel like a lot of what happened in the turmoil in that relationship previously was because of unprocessed grief.
Yeah.
And due to that, there were so many things that were triggered, right? And so I didn't realize that mentally anything was wrong with me. If I look back, of course, I'm like, oh, I probably was dealing
Recognize
with
it now. Yeah.
anxiety, yeah, like depression, like all this other stuff, but never like, oh, well, maybe it was bipolar disorder. Like that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so my wife is the one who, at the time, of course, she was my girlfriend. She was like, or just my friend, really. She was like, something's not right. You're not eating. You're not, you're not doing these things. And so I'm thankful because, she really helped me say, okay, I need to go to a therapist. I'm like, oh no,
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine. This is how I've been living my life.
Yeah.
So I'm fine. This is normal. But it took somebody else to say that that's not normal. And so for me, it has been pivotal for me to have somebody in the home who loves me. I mean, when I've gone through manic episodes and all that type of stuff, when I was suicidal, all that stuff,
Yeah.
having somebody home and understanding. She didn't know anything about bipolar disorder, I'm sure, and I'm sure she'll talk about it, but she had to navigate through it. And so tell me how your experience was at first, kind of figuring out your diagnosis and then having to, navigate through that even now.
I feel like for me it was like a roller coaster ride because, well, initially I never ever suspected that I would have like bipolar disorder when, especially because of the stigma that's usually attached to it. So we
Yeah,
think it looks like one way.
yeah,
And I
definitely.
omitted myself of being anyone who could ever have to deal with this. I was
Hmm.
always diagnosed with like clinical depression, anxiety, things of that nature. But I didn't get my diagnosis for bipolar disorder type 2 until 2021 after having 6 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody noticed. I've done 6-week checkups and answered all of these boxes correctly, and they always just passed it off as PPD. And it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
until 2021 that I realized that something was completely and severely just off. I had
Mm-hmm.
been admitted to the psychiatric ward back in 2018, and even that psychiatrist never suspected anything.
Wow.
Like, for me, that was the most like mind-boggling thing, to have a psychiatrist and a psychologist sit down with me, and neither of them ever mentioned anything about bipolar disorder. So receiving that diagnosis, this was obviously during COVID, and there were
Yeah.
no one-on-one or in-person visits, rather. And I did this virtually through an app
Mm.
called Cerebral, and
Mm.
you're able to like choose the kind of therapist you want. So I chose me a
Yeah.
black girl, and she was
Of
from here in
course.
Brooklyn, and we were talking. And it's just like how me and you are talking right
Yeah.
now. Like, she was like, "Girl, let me tell you something. Let me tell you what I think this is." And she
Mhm.
laid out everything for me, and I was like, "Holy crap! I think you're right."
Yeah.
And it kind of made sense because I was in school at that time for psychology, and I was like, okay, this looks very, very familiar. So when I finally was able to
Mm.
share this with my now former spouse, it was almost like there was this excitement that came from him. It was
Mm.
almost like a, now I have something to kind of pin on you. So unlike you, I didn't have
Wow.
the support. There were many days where I literally was made to feel like I was crazy. Like, I knew that even in spite of my diagnosis, that I still heard from God. But when you're connected to someone who doesn't have that relationship with God and uses things, like your mental illness as a detriment against you, it's just like, I felt like I didn't matter to God at that time, and that I was going to
Mm.
have to die with this thing and just be one of those people on the streets that's walking around and don't know their head from their tail. But let me tell you something, there is life after the diagnosis, there's life after leaving the spouse. And that's what this podcast is all about, is showing you guys what it's like to,
Yeah.
receive a diagnosis. And even when spouses leave and life takes a turn for the worse,
Yeah.
still covered and I'm still here. So
And that's why I
shout out to
love,
God.
yeah, shout out to Big
Shout out
Daddy.
to Big
Shout out
G.
to Sky Daddy. Go ahead, Sky
That
Daddy.
part.
Oh,
Shout out to
Sky
Big
Daddy.
G.
No, but
Yeah.
I think it's so important that you said that it was used against you. And
Yeah.
it's so many times where I know bipolar disorder is used against people.
Yes.
And I think sometimes that's why people don't want to express that they are
Express anything.
bipolar. And some people know, they just like, I'm not telling
I
nobody.
don't want to know for real, for real. Yeah.
Right, 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 right. And what people don't understand is what you don't reveal, it can't be healed. You have to begin to reveal things
Yeah.
so that you can be healed in the correct way, right?
In the right way.
And so
Yes.
I'm gonna bring Chanel on. Uh, Chanel, are you there? Are you there?
I'm
Hey.
here, girl. I'm here.
Hey, girl. Uh,
Love that.
so this is well. I'm gonna allow you to introduce yourself, Miss Chanel. Tell me your name and just tell me who you are. Introduce yourself, girl.
Okay, girl. Thank you for this platform. Thank you. Thank you. Um, my name is Chanel. I go by Nell. Here on this one as Shamika's wife. So I guess I'm here just to kind of give the other side of it to say.
Yeah,
Um, so we're gonna see.
my wife, my wife, my wife.
That part.
And so thank you for being here, Chanel. And I'm so excited to have you here just because I know this is something that a lot of people wanted to know. Some people just because they know you, right? Uh,
Facts.
Was thinking that.
Period. But some people really want to know how to navigate through the waters of mental diagnosis and
Yeah.
mental instability. And so tell me, Chanel, how was the journey for you in the beginning in terms of learning about my diagnosis or even thinking that maybe something was wrong with me?
Hmm. The beginning of it was real hard. It was hard because I had to learn something new, something that I have never seen up close and personal. I've heard of it, I've seen it on shows, but the stereotypical stuff is the stuff that I was knowledgeable of. People that can't fend for themselves, people can't, do the day to day, the people that is behind the padded windows and doors and all of that, that's a stereotypical stuff that I was knowledgeable of. So to experience it firsthand and to see it look nothing like what people portrayed it to look like, that was new. And it took me aback, really, honestly. It took a lot of having to just educate myself, just to try to understand how I can help you overcome it, like to navigate the space of wanting to become knowledgeable. That's the main thing. You got to want to become knowledgeable of something that doesn't affect you directly as the person, but it affects you as a whole, as a unit. So having to understand that and just walk through that journey, that was hard, because to see your mate, your person, initially you were just my friend at the time, but to see somebody that you care so much for go through something that you can't help them with, to feel helpless and hopeless is one thing. It's still something I struggle with, because even though you've navigated the space and you've learned so much about yourself and how to come out of it, or not let it get as bad as it could possibly, still having that hopeless feeling, because I gotta let you experience it. Medications don't work. We've been through all of that. So it was hard. It was a hard space to navigate. So, yeah.
I think that one of the things that you said was not becoming knowledgeable about something that doesn't affect you directly.
Right.
And Anais, you talked about how in your experience, right? You talked about how it seemed like your former spouse didn't want to have the knowledge for good, but actually for the opposite
The
reason,
opposite.
right? And so it's so important. It goes back to the intention behind it,
Intentions.
right?
Yeah.
Yes, intention. Because do you want to become knowledgeable to use this against a person, or do
Heal
you
a
want to
hurt.
become
Yeah.
knowledgeable to help them?
Yeah.
And I think for us, for Chanel and I think it was navigating that space, but we were still like dating, right? So dating somebody and realizing like, oh, this lady crazy,
Uh-huh.
but also like, so Chanel kind of talked to us about how it was dating, but also understanding like, okay, something was wrong. And for you, what kind of triggered it to say, okay, something's not right? Something's not right.
I think the beginning of it, it I'm not here to tell you a story, but it happened pretty much at the very beginning, more so, of
Oh
us.
yeah, I had already told them that it was right after my divorce, girl. It's okay.
Okay. Okay. Great. Like I said, I
After
ain't gonna
I
tell
had
you a
lost,
story because I didn't know where we were in
yeah,
that process of it.
after I had lost my mother and then the divorce.
Yeah.
So
She
I told them that was kind of
did.
the starting point of where everything kind of was going.
Right. So with that, like what I noticed was like when you went through the initial phase of it, you always wanted to be to yourself. You like to be in dark spaces. You was not your outgoing bubbly self no more. And watching that, like literally, coming in as a friend perspective and knowing like, okay, this is my turn up girl, like we gonna get it, so knowing that side of you and understanding that side of you and connecting to that person, and then seeing you the exact opposite, to see you as a shell of yourself, basically.
Wow.
So to see that night and day, I knew something was off. I knew something was wrong. And the fact that it wouldn't be a day or 2 days. No. This is like we in week 3 and we still kicking it hard. And week 3 of you just being like, turn the lights off. Don't nobody talk to me. Put my cell phone here, leave it here. Oh, I'm not eating. I'm like, girl, did you eat today? No. When the last time you ate? I think I ate last week. What you mean? You think you ate last week? So trying to understand that and connect those things, for me, it was really hard. And like I said, knowing one end of the spectrum of where you're just so outgoing and so full of life, to see you just in a place of sunkenness where as though you can't get yourself out.
Yeah.
So that part right there was like, wow, what do I do or how can I help? And this is just coming from a person of being concerned, a place of being concerned. This isn't, oh, this is my girlfriend. This is
Right.
none of that. It's just coming from a place of concern. Like the common person, you would hope that if you've been around a person enough that you
Or
recognize
recognize, yeah.
when they're in that space and that you're trying to do whatever you possibly can to help pull them out. Just being a decent person, you
Yeah.
know. So navigating that and understanding that it was a lot, and trying to pull you out of that space into nobody else I knew about it. So I couldn't sit and talk to somebody else and be like, help me understand, help me to help her. I didn't have that, because it's the don't ask, don't tell. Y'all already know that concept, Black community, we don't discuss none of that. We don't know mental health. A therapist, a psychiatrist, what? I'm not doing that. So to try to navigate that space and learn it, it was a lot.
Yeah.
Um, I
Yeah.
don't know. I lost your initial question because I just got so wrapped up in
No,
that.
you answered it. You answered it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, Anais, let me ask you a question. For you, as you were discovering your diagnosis, because it seems like you kind of figured it out with the clinical staff and everything else.
Yeah.
How did you navigate it by yourself? Right? And I'm
I did.
asking because she's speaking about how she felt like she had to pull me out because I was in dark rooms and stuff like that. But how did you navigate that by yourself? And also, if there are people out there that feel like this is what they're going through, how do you navigate that by
Yeah.
yourself if you don't have a partner?
To be honest, I didn't. I spiraled. I literally spiraled.
Mm-hmm.
I blew money just because I was just trying to fill the void of here I am with something else is wrong now and I have to face it by myself. So I just completely spiraled out of control. It wasn't until last year when I actually walked away from my marriage is when I really realized that if I don't get help, if I'm not intentional about
Yeah,
really being healed on the other side on earth
yeah,
right now, um, yeah, you're really gonna be on the street for real, for real.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it was like the hardest thing ever. I was trying to express it to like my siblings and my mom, and no, like Chanel said, this is not something that's talked about in our community. So I would tell people things about it before I even was like public about it on social media, and I would like text people, and they would be like, the little emoji with the eyes, they'd be like, or the like. I'm
yeah,
just like, is everybody thinking that this is something that's so strange?
yeah.
But I tried to sit down with my mom and have the conversation back then, and she couldn't like wrap her mind around it. I think initially she felt like she had failed me in some way. And I tried to like I would send her videos that I would find on YouTube and little things I would find on Instagram just to kind of give her an idea like you didn't do
Yeah,
nothing wrong, sis. Like I just need you to help me
yeah,
now. Like, forget
yeah,
about what we didn't know. How can we move forward in this moment?
yeah.
And it's fast forward now to this year. Like the people who are really around me are so intentional at becoming knowledgeable. So to answer your latter question, my biggest advice would be to find people who are really intentional about you and making sure that you are
Mm,
doing the things that you need to do to get the help that you need. If you're sitting in a funky room, like that was me for weeks and days at a time, I wouldn't shower, I wouldn't eat, drop down to 100 pounds, and the people around me would just talk, 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 talk.
mhm,
Now God has sent me people who are just like, sis, you might want to get the Irish Spring to the left. There's the water. Go have a talk
quickly.
with him. Like I have people around me
Yeah,
now who are like, no, we need to go out. You need some vitamin. When's the last time you went outside and got some sun? When's the last time you took a vitamin? So having people around you who are not just here when you want to go to brunch and there when your man is cheating on you or whomever. Like get people who are just like, I know you, like Chanel said, I know that bubbly side of you. This is not who you are. what's wrong
Mhm.
and really are like, serious about doing something about it.
Yeah.
Community
And
is
and I
important.
yeah, and I want to say, like you said, community is important, but and let me be clear. Um, and this because this is a transparent conversation. A lot of times the community is not going to be the friends and family that you think it would be. A lot of
Oh,
people
that part.
took my diagnosis personally,
Oh, yes.
and they took it
Offensive. Yeah.
as if like you were kind of saying about your mom, like, hey, I like, what did I do wrong? And it's
Yeah.
like, you didn't do anything wrong.
But I got to deal
My
with this.
mind did, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is not something I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't
Can't
control this.
blame on anybody. Yeah.
So sometimes what you'll find is that the people that you feel like is supposed to be your community won't be your
There won't
community.
be.
And sometimes that might mean you have to find a support group. You might have to find something like this, right? You have to find people who get it. But more importantly, you have to learn yourself more than ever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I found is that my community revolved around, at the time, who I was hiding, who I was
Mhm.
masking to be,
Yeah.
right? And not who I actually am,
Yeah.
right? So
So
the circle that I might have had before was the people that I had to put the mask on to be around.
yes. Yep.
Now, either you're going to take me as I am, what Mary J said, or
Or
add
nothing at all.
nothing at all. Because we cannot continue to live our lives masked for everybody else. Because
Yeah.
unfortunately, I did that for a long time. And what I found was that that mask hurt me more than it helped me.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And and when you do that, you are now living your life as somebody else. And at some point, I think I began to believe the lies I was telling myself.
Mhm.
And I said, no. And a lot of times I found myself, and actually I was talking to Chanel and my sister about this yesterday. I was telling lies about myself because I didn't want people to know how I was really suffering.
Every day. Every day. Me. I was a
They're
master.
like, you all right?
Master.
Oh, yeah.
I'm doing amazing. God is so
Knowing
good.
when I get
I'm
home,
so
I'm going to
great.
turn the lights off, hide in my closet, and cry for 7 hours.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Chanel, tell me how it is for you, right? As a mate with somebody with that has bipolar disorder, how do you navigate that space for yourself? Because I know a lot of people are watching this because they want to know how to care for a person who's dealing with a mental diagnosis, whether it's bipolar, depression, anxiety, whatever it is.
Mhm.
What would be your advice to say, hey, this is how you care for them in whatever capacity that you need to?
I would say first and foremost, asking them what they need. They have enough people telling them what they need. That's not
Ooh,
what they need. They
Mm.
don't want
that's
somebody to
good.
tell them what they need. You need to ask them, like, hey, how can I help you? Like, what can I do to help you get through this? And
Yeah.
they'll tell you. And some of them, in your case, sometimes you could tell me, and then other times you just didn't have it in you. But even in those moments when you didn't have it in you, I had learned and watched enough to
Mhm.
understand what I could do to help you pull you out of it. So you
Yeah.
have to be very vigilant, hands down, 100%. You're gonna have to see it before it even gets there. You're gonna have to see the changes in the mood before it gets there. So
Yeah.
before you get to your manic mode, before your spouse, your partner, whomever, your mom, your dad, you have to recognize that they're getting there. Like you got to recognize when, because they're not going to tell you when enough is enough. It's going to pile on to them on top of them, and then it's going to be all up in your face. And by
Mhm.
then it's too late. So
Yeah.
you got to recognize the signs before they
Yeah.
even get full blown. So meaning like if they become more withdrawn, like, oh, I don't want to talk today. Okay, give them a
Yeah.
little time, but come back to them. Don't give them too much time. It's a
Too
such thing as
much.
too much
Yeah.
time. It's a such thing as that. Every person needs their space, but you have to put a limit on the space that you're giving because idle minds create a major
Yeah.
playground. So,
Yeah.
so you can only give but so much space. And then I'm not saying crowd them. I'm not saying being overbearing. I'm not saying none of that. But check in on them. Even when you got your strong friends, your strong people that put on that mask, like y'all just talked about, put on that mask. Oh girl, I'm good. Let's go. Okay.
Yeah.
Sit down. How's your mental today? How are you feeling today? Tell me what your mindset is at right now that we're talking. Tell me how you feel. And sometimes you got to bring them to the side, even in their most turn up. Sometimes you got to bring them to the side because sometimes you're turning up like that to hide something else.
Yeah.
You know, so you got to recognize it, and just 100% communication is going to be your main go-to. You know, and I'm not saying the verbal communication all the time. Your body will speak 100 languages for you.
True.
You know, so you got to pay attention to all the cues that's coming.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
that's so good that you said that, because I think that one of the things that I don't know about you, but when I'm manic or I'm in that space where I'm like, I don't want to be near nobody. I
Yeah.
don't want nobody to talk to me.
You
I
are
don't want
me.
nobody. So are you like that? Because I'm like, we don't got to talk. We
Oh
don't.
yeah. And
And that's why I think it was so important what you said, Chanel, when you said it's the body speaks. The body
oh
speaks,
yes.
right? Because there are oftentimes I cannot express. I don't have the capacity to express
No bandwidth.
how
Yeah.
I feel, right? So I just want to make sure that you guys understand that, hey, this is what's happening, but I can't say it with my mouth. Um, and so Chanel, tell me what a manic episode. And let me just say this:
Hmm.
I am sharing these things not because I want to expose it. Let me just be clear.
Yeah.
I want to make it known because this, I believe my mentor and my spiritual mother always says my journey is someone else's freedom.
Yep.
And I realize that I don't go through the things that I go through just for me. I
That's true.
go through them to show somebody else that they can get through this. And so Chanel, for me, what does a manic episode look like? What does it look like? What does it look like for me?
Hmm.
for you, what is a manic episode look like? It goes from the bubbly to the shut down, don't talk to me. It's like the one worders. It's non-eating. Is the dark rooms, the dark spaces. It's the I'm not coming out of my room.
Mhm.
Like Ananice said earlier, you know, like oh girl, I'm not showering. I don't want to do nothing. I just want to sit right here. Don't talk to me. Let me sit right here in this space right here. But you've gotten to a point now, like in the beginning, also it was the running up of the bills of everything. Like, oh, let me charge this because it's gonna make me feel better.
Come
But
on,
it
speak
didn't.
about
Like,
it.
I was like, dang, we got like another package. Is that Amazon? Is that Coach? Like, wait a minute. So we got a lot of packages coming. Like every day having to step over packages to get into the house. So it was a lot of that. It was a lot of like just detachment as a whole.
Wow.
Like, you know, you going from I want to sit, I want to talk all the time to just being like, I ain't got it for you today. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want you to sit here and hug on me really too much because I just ain't got to get back to you. And so having to recognize that and go through that, I was like, well, dang, like what did I do? You know, so it's a lot of that too. So when you got into those spaces, it was a lot of, well, what did Chanel do wrong to make her respond like that? But then I had to step back a moment and be like, okay, well, it might not have necessarily been something that I've done. You know, it might be this disease. You know, so it's hard navigating that space. It's hard trying to understand if it's something that I did as a person
Yeah.
that triggered you there, or was it something that it just triggered, you know, because like I said, you got to pay attention. And, you know, because every couples and every person is going to have something, and their person is going to get on their nerves for something. So it could have been a simple thing that I did something that just was like, girl, you didn't got on my nerves today. So it was hard to navigate those spaces. So that's a major one. And still to this day, you just be like, all right, if I did something wrong, let me apologize, girl. If not, I'm here when you're ready to talk. Like I've learned to navigate it like that. Like I'm here whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
And I just check in. Like so, those are what I had to learn with that. So
Yeah.
and now,
Um, so one of the questions, and I'm just gonna get kind of into this. One of the questions that somebody asked for me to ask you, Chanel, was, do you feel like it's harder being in a relationship with someone who has bipolar disorder than someone who may not, right? Because you've been in relationships before. So do you feel like being in a relationship with someone with bipolar disorder maybe complicates the relationship?
I'll say, to a certain degree, yes and no. Yes, because it's a label on it, but no at the same time because it's a label on it. Like you've been in relationships before that your person was like, "What the what?" and you just look like this huzzy is crazy, and what the what. But
Yeah.
to actually have a person that has a label on it, like you could be like, okay, I understand that it's not this person in particular. Like, so it's a lot of people out here that's relationships is just trash, and we're throwing around the terminology, and I had to learn from that too, of being like, oh, this person is just crazy, like like that stigma, just saying everybody's crazy. I had to learn to not put that on everybody, because that's not the situation 100%. So I'm not gonna say that it makes it harder or not. I think it enlightens you to understand how you need to navigate based on it having a title on it. I think it helps you navigate a space better, as
Yeah.
opposed to this person just having highs and lows and you not understanding why they have a high and low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say that it makes it, harder. You know, every relationship is hard. So let's call it a spade a spade. Like every relationship is hard if it's worth having it.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, Anais, I want to ask you a question. I know that right now you're single.
Yes.
Does it worry you when it comes to your diagnosis about dating? And is that something that are you? I'm sure you're intentional about dating somebody who would try to understand and know, but is that something that scares you, or something that is like, because I feel like for me, if I had to date, I would be like, I had to date another crazy person, because you're not gonna understand. Like, like, how does that feel for you in a single dating kind of thing? How does that work?
There was a wise prophetess that once said, "At first I was afraid. I was petrified." Do you understand? Uh, I am absolutely horrified today because of this. I'm going to be honest. I've been single now for well over a year. And, I'll get through the talking stage and they'll be like, well, anything you want to share? And I'm like, skirt block, because now you're in my business. Don't do that. It's just like, I I go so hard to share as much of myself on social media, so that way I can kind of segue into these kind
Yeah,
of conversations, so that way my life is an open book. I don't have to have those one-on-ones every single time.
yeah,
After 3 weeks of, I think I'm about to be in love and he may be the one. Nah, he ain't. And I done told you
yeah.
I got bipolar, so now you think I'm crazy. You done told all your friends you had to ghost me because I was
Right.
crazy. That's
Yeah,
not the case. So now I feel the need to like just kind of share openly all about my diagnosis, so that way, when the one does come along, they can read it in my bio. But right now, I'm just a little I think because of the stigma that's so strongly attached to it, especially within the Black community, I just
yeah,
feel the need to not openly have that conversation unless I see that it's something that is progressing. But I haven't gotten over the fear yet of being marked or labeled as something that I'm not, especially because there's no real knowledge out there. Well, let me not say that. People are not opening the books to read the knowledge
yes,
that is out there.
yes,
So when you have to constantly be the one to say, well, it's not what you think, it's actually this,
Mm,
this, and this instead, it almost seems like cap, like
yeah,
yeah.
I watch movies. I've watched Batman
right,
and Joker. I know what it looks like, and you have to say
yeah,
no. We can get jobs. We can have successful relationships and run businesses and
Yep.
and work in corporate and be on the cover of Forbes magazine. So I
yeah,
hope that we're able to kind of like break the stigma around the diagnosis so that I could go find my boo.
Yeah,
You know
because
what I'm
you deserve
saying?
it. You deserve it. And I, thinking about that, the people who are out there who are dating, like in my mind, it's like for me to have to explain, because I feel like not only would I have to, you have to learn me. It feel like you would have to learn my diagnosis, and I
Literally.
don't feel like that. Like I had that kind of time. You know what I'm
That's
saying?
exactly how it feels.
But real talk, I realized that's not just romantic relationship
Absolutely. Yep.
because and one thing I love about the people who are now in my circle is that they much like Chanel, they have been intentional about learning
Learning.
about
Yeah.
bipolar disorder, right? And this was so good to me because my spiritual mother and I love her to death. We were going to London, and on the plane, right? I was like, well, should I take my medicine? I was like, maybe because Chanel had packed my medicine, right? So Chanel packed my medicine. I was like, well, maybe I should take my medicine now. And she was like, yeah, girl, take it. I said, well, but if y'all get me off this plane based on my medicine, if y'all get me off this plane and I'm not all the way ready to get up yet, it's gonna be a problem. I don't do well if you wake me up after I've had my medicine. I
Me,
don't do
I get
well.
really groggy. Yes.
And it's yeah, it's a thing, right? So I said I wait, right? I said I wait. And when I got to the hotel, I was like, I have to take my medicine. So there are different things in
Yeah.
relationships that people have to, I now have to explain to people why I have these certain routines, right?
Hmm.
Because there are routines that I have to follow in order for my mind to be okay. So I
Yes.
have to get a certain amount of sleep in order for me to be functional. Now we know
Yes.
bipolar. I know you have gone probably a week or whatever because you're superhuman. But I think the longest I've gone without sleep is probably 4 or 5 days. That is not okay. But because bipolar disorder, it just allows you to have that continuous
Yeah.
time. So now I know it don't matter where I'm at, what I'm doing. If I need to sleep, I know in my mind I need to sleep.
Yeah.
And so even explaining like, hey,
I gotta
I
take a nap.
know y'all want to do this, this, and this, but I gotta go to sleep. Right.
Yeah.
And it was so wonderful because she said, well, what is this? Like like what does this mean? This and this and this. And
Hmm.
it felt good because somebody wanted to know.
Yes. I didn't
Somebody
just
wanted
brush
to
it off.
know.
Right.
Yeah. But even when it comes down to the heat, and you and I talked about this, people think, and I was born in the summer, and everybody
Me
like, you
too.
in summer, baby. You know that. Let me tell you something.
I don't like it.
You put me in the heat for too long,
It's a
and it's not gonna be good for nobody,
it's
right?
a lot.
Child, and I say this because when the temperature changes, there is something that
Oh,
happens to the brain
yes. Yes.
that literally, I don't know what it is, and I'm doing further research, okay, because this is a real thing. It's something that clicks in my mind like we are irritated. You are hot.
All the
When the
time.
temperature in my body changes
Yeah.
and I am hot, everything else changes.
Yeah.
And this is something that I had to learn. So when I carry 85 fans with me, a neck fan, personal fan, this fan, I be like, it could be 2 degrees. I be like, turn the air on, and they be like, turn the air on. I'm hot. I
Yeah.
don't know why. But this for me is something that Chanel had to help me navigate,
Mm.
right? And with the different, and Chanel has been with me when I've been to therapists. One therapist cussed me out, another therapist because she was late. It was another therapist that just didn't show up, like, but also psychiatrists. And we talk about medicine. I know, girl. When we talk about medicine, Chanel literally has become my pharmacist.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I say this because, and I'm gonna let Chanel talk about this, but why did you have to start taking control, Chanel, of my medication and all that stuff?
The highs and the lows. Some days you take your medicine, other days you didn't. Sometimes you took too much
Well,
medicine.
not now. I take my medicine every day
Yeah,
now,
now
but
you take it every
before,
day. But that's
Mm.
how we got here, the highs and the lows, the taking it and the non-taking it, taking overtaking it. But like, girl, how many pills you take today? Oh, girl, I took the bottle. What you mean you took the bottle? Like, hold on. Like, all right, let's navigate it. So it that's how we got there initially. And then having to regulate the medicines and all that, the withdrawal, that is trash. So if any of y'all experiencing that out there, I feel for you, because that is a major space to navigate.
It is.
They have medicines, and then all of a sudden they don't have these medicines, and they trying to wean them off these medicines. Patience, because it's hard for us, but just envision how they feel going through it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is something that we will never understand unless we officially sit in their seat and live in their skin. There's no way for us to understand what that feels like and what those withdrawals feel like. Learn to navigate it.
Yeah,
Like, just be patient.
yeah, I think that the biggest thing was I was like, I cannot imagine. I think I was at the time I was taking like 10 medicines a night. I said I cannot imagine being on these 10 medicines for the rest of my life. This
Mm.
was probably about 5 years ago. But that's why she had to take over, because I literally was like, if somebody doesn't hold me accountable, I'm not
I'm
going to
never
take
gonna.
these medicines.
Yeah.
And until I realized how important they were, now I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't struggle sometimes and be like, I don't want to take these medicines because this can't be my life. Like
Yeah,
literally, it feels like a burden. It feels like a
it
burden.
does.
Like this can't be my life.
Yeah.
But I realized how much I need them.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, like I was like, no. And like she said, having to navigate through the disease itself in my body, in my mind, and then worry about what medicines I'm gonna take. No, you gonna have to somebody else gonna have to figure this out. Because then when you
Oh
go to a
yes.
psychiatrist sometimes, they're not thinking about the fact they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna wean you off of this. They don't care about the fact that you're gonna be withdrawal, you're gonna be in cold sweats, you're gonna have to sit in the tub, you're gonna have to do this, this, and this because you literally can't. You're withdrawal off of medicine you've been on for years.
Yeah.
What?
Mhm.
That has basically made you suicidal.
And
And one thing I do want to like really touch on before we get to Anais, because I'm sure you have questions for Chanel. Um,
mm-hmm.
what does it feel like, Chanel, when I am, I guess, what was the space? How was it when I was suicidal, right? Because a lot of people, being bipolar is manic. Yes, it's bad. But there were times, a lot of times, where I was suicidal because of my diagnosis, but also just living life
Yeah.
having this diagnosis. So tell me how it was navigating, what it was like, number one, when I was suicidal, but how was it kind of navigating through that space, and how did you do that?
Mm, that's
I know it's rough. I know it's
yeah.
rough. I
That
know
that
it's
was a rough one. When I first recognized like you was in one of those spaces, it was something that's like hide everything. Any objects, all medications, all
Mm.
of it. But enough is never enough. It's like having this envision having a infant, and this your first time being a parent, and you like, oh, my baby can't fall off the bed, oh, my baby can't get this bump on his. So it you can't overprotect them, because what's happening, whatever is going to happen is going to happen. So just having that envisionment of knowing that your mate is in a suicidal space, and you can't be in 1,000 places at one moment.
Yeah.
So I can't go in the bathroom with you every single time to make sure that you's in there doing using the bathroom. That you're not in there cutting on yourself, or that you're not in there taking all these extra pills. Like, just that right there makes you just be like, oh my God, like you're always on 1,000. Your anxiety is always on 1,000, because you're like, I don't know what I'm gonna walk into. Like, I
Mm.
don't know what's on this other side of this door. Like, if I go to work, God forbid, if I come home, what am I gonna walk into?
Mm-hmm.
Will I be there? At least if it does happen, will I be there to help you with whatever that it may be? Or will it be a situation that I walked in and now I'm too late? So that's a whole nother conversation. And so that puts you into a whole nother mindset of like, what can I do?
Mhm.
And it's like, we navigated that space by ourselves. At the time, like you said, we didn't have a community at the time. So we navigated that space, me, you. and the kid, and that's another thing, having a child in that space and knowing that you have a parent in the household that is in a manic mode, in a manic suicidal mode. It's like, what is her mindset? Is her mindset good enough to understand and recognize the fact that she won't do nothing in here while he's here?
Mm.
Like that was my saving grace right there. Honestly, I put my hand to God. That was my saving grace a lot of times, because I was like, she wouldn't do nothing with him in there. Like, that is what I felt like kept you here with me a lot of those times when you was in those spaces. So when I walked out, I was confident enough that you wouldn't be able to do that wholeheartedly with him in there. Now, if his tail went outside, I don't know. You got to stay at the house all day today, okay? Can't go outside until I get there, all right? And then he like, what? Why can't go outside? Because I said so. Just stay home, okay? Adult business. Just stay home, all right? If anything look crazy, call me. So, like, trying to navigate that space, and just like I said before, the feeling of hopelessness is something that I cannot describe enough. There will be plenty of times when you're learning this that you will feel absolutely hopeless. So all you can do is pray. If to whatever your higher being is, that's all you can do to navigate that space, or you're going to lose your, I don't know if I can cuss on you, you're going to lose your stuff too. Like, so it's like, there's no other way of trying to explain that. Like, and then it hurts. Like, it legit hurt. Like, to see my person in that space and I can't do nothing, other than be there for them. But to know that I can't make them feel better, like, that's something that they have to work on themselves. And, with, if the medications are regulated, and if it helps, that's what the medications will do. But not all medicines are regulated. So that's a whole nother conversation, and that's a whole nother whatever. But those are like your things that you're relying on. Like, just hoping that person can help them navigate their self out of that. And talking to whoever your higher up is, and just asking them to be there, because you can't be in 1,000 places all the time. Life is still continuing. Bills are still coming. Things still have to go on. If you have children, you still have to be there for that child or them children. So even though your person or you yourself are going through this, life is still going on. So you have to understand that and try to navigate that space too. And that's extremely hard. It's extremely hard. And I don't have an answer for that one. I made it here by talking to the man upstairs. To him and telling him how frustrated I was. That's how I got here. That's how I got here, to be on this other side of, being able to, make a little humorous joke about it. But at the end of the day, it's serious, because you don't know what's going to happen to your person in that suicidal moment. Like, so we've been there too many times that I don't want to talk about, to be quite honest with y'all. Like, we've been there, been through it. I've seen and discovered a lot of things. And to walk in on certain things and you're like, oh no, I'm not doing nothing. But deep down, I know that you are. And all I can do is cry on the inside, because I can't express my emotions while this is how I interpreted it back then. I couldn't express my emotions while you're in your manic mode. You needed me to be strong for you when you could not be strong. So I couldn't show you my breakdowns. I couldn't cry. I couldn't, just have a whole breakdown moment. I couldn't do none of that. I had to eat that. I had to put on that mask and be like, we're going to figure it out. I'm okay. I'm going to make sure you okay. Having to put on that mask, knowing in the inside you have lost it. In the inside you, the small kid in the corner crying. But to know that you can't express that on the outward, it is hard. It's definitely hard. But knowing that I'm on the other side, I don't know what you felt like to get you there. So that's this spaces that you got to navigate. And if your person is worth it, all people are worth it at the end of the day. If you yourself feel like you can't handle it, let them know, but have them find somebody that can help them navigate that space. Every person is worth it. At the end of the day, every person is worth it. I don't care if that's your official person, meaning like your spouse. It does not matter who they are. Any person that you have come in contact with, they are worth it. It's
Mm.
worth you sitting there like, look, let's help you figure it out. Even if I'm not the person to walk you through it, if I'm not that person that's going to walk this journey with you, I'm going to help you find somebody that can.
Yes.
Everybody is worth it.
And that's it's so important that you said that because everybody doesn't have the capacity to do what Chanel did, right? Everybody doesn't have that capacity, and like she said, but don't just drop them. Like
Right.
Yeah.
you need to leave them in somebody else's hands who is more than capable. Everybody is worth it, and I think that that was so good. Everybody's worth it, but I feel like we can't just drop people. And I understand that some people are in a place mentally that they don't have the capacity to take care of anybody else,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
But make sure you leave them in somebody else's hands. So, Anais, I'm gonna let you answer your question, ask your questions. I only have one more question left for Chanel, but go ahead, girl, because I know you got questions, girl.
I feel like one of my biggest questions would be a lot of times when people think of mania, they only think about like the really down, depressed side. And what a lot of people don't realize is that mania can also be very up to the point where we're too up, it becomes grandiose.
Yeah.
How are you able to differentiate when Shamika is in a state of manic euphoria and just her normal self? What does that look like to you?
A lot of people might know, might not know. Shamika is outgoing anyway. The natural
Mhm.
Shamika is outgoing. She's become a little bit more reserved, but not really. But
Yeah.
when she's in that grand scheme of things, that's when she's loud. That's when she's
Yes.
when she walks into a room, she's already gonna gain the attention. But
That part.
yeah, yeah, it's a level of like feeling like, okay, babe, you doing a little too much now. Like I give her the
Mhm.
space to be her. I give her the space to
Right.
however she feels. I'm here. I'm here to and I play the back. Like if anybody know me, I play the back. Like you nine times out of 10, you don't even know I'm there outside of seeing me being there. You don't hear me too much. So I allow her to be her in her spaces. Like if she decides that she want to be up in there, dance on tables if
Right.
you decide to. If just the moment that she's in and that's the space that she's in of just being happy with it, okay. But I'm watching it to see how it elevates or how it fluctuates.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm saying in the sense of I always play the back because I need to know what's going on. That's how I interpret it. Like for
Yeah.
me, I have to understand what's happening because things can change instantly. So knowing that, yeah, she has fun and she loves to have fun, but once it get like here and now, it's like, okay, you're doing a lot now. So just
Hmm.
recognize it once you go from like, oh, you're regular, oh, I'm enjoying the time and I'm enjoying the space to this being coming a
Right.
lot, and then like overly a lot. And you just, step in like, hey, babe, let me holler at you. Let me talk to you for a second. And
Yes.
sometimes she hears it, but then sometimes she's like, girl, I'm living my best life type
Right.
thing.
Right. Oh
and then,
man.
and now that's a different type of conversation because we've had that
Yeah.
before. Whereas though it's now like now I gotta step in because now I gotta come at you differently. Because
Yeah.
yes, I want you to have a good time, but I want you to have a good time within reason, not a good time where as though now it's becoming over the top and
Yeah.
overbearing and over everything. And typically it can
Mhm.
happen outside. So not only is it puts her in safety issues, safety situations, and things like that. It puts others. So it's different. Like if it's just us, have at it. Whatever. I don't care. Whatever you want. If it's just us, if it's just us and people that know you, people that's connected to you like that, have at it. But if we're out in a setting where as though we're in public spaces and she gets there, no, I'm gonna have to de-escalate that quickly because
Right. Right.
we're not doing that in this space here. It's just absolutely not happening in this space. Or we'll
Yeah.
remove ourselves from this space and we'll go somewhere else. If that's what you feel like you need to do, we can always relocate so that you can continue to have your way up here moment.
Yes.
That's fine. But you have to play the back to understand if and when it is needed. And you have to be intentional about it. Because a lot of times
Absolutely.
it might be a losing battle. Because
Absolutely.
it has been plenty of times it's like, no, babe, I want to stay here. Babe, you don't want me to be great. Not today, I guess.
Yeah.
Not no.
I mean, argue her down. You don't love me.
Right.
You don't love
What is
me.
a no? Right.
No, you don't love me.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. So you got to give them that space, but you got to also be stern
Knows
about
to
it
reel them
too.
back. Yeah.
Yeah. So you just got to pay attention, That's
I feel
all.
like a good like segue question for me. Like when I look back on my previous marriage, um, as people who battle bipolar disorder, we are very creative.
Mm-hmm.
We are very gifted. We're very talented individuals. Our brains don't stop. The racing thoughts thing, it has its pros and its cons. One of the greatest pros is the ability to think outside of the box.
Yeah.
For me, I would say one of the things that I struggled with was recognizing when something was a good idea and when it was a God idea. Like a lot of the ideas that I had were so grandiose, and my spouse at that time couldn't fathom whether it was a huge idea or even if it was something that was so simple, because I just always kept coming up with ideas. So my question for you would be, because Shamika and I are kind of like mirrors as far as our level of creativity go, and that's my sis for a reason.
Period.
How are you able to help her kind of like navigate what ideas are for now, or maybe what just is great but maybe not for her and maybe for somebody else? Like, what does the support look like in helping her to kind of niche down and figure out what am I to hone in on, and is this just mania right now, just speaking, and I can't be a millionaire by tomorrow? What does that look like for y'all?
So for us, that looks like I'm I'm pretty straightforward for the most part. So if she asks me something or we talking about a scenario, we gotta sit and talk about it in detail. Like since I asked a thousand and one questions,
Boom.
and she like, "Babe, I ain't got the answers to that." Well, then I guess this ain't
Exactly.
going nowhere. So I gotta
Love
ask you
that.
1,001 questions because I need to make
Yes.
sure that you thought this out from start to finish and
Love
how
that.
and what this means for us and what does it look
Yeah.
like here. Like, yes,
Yes.
I love the grand ideas, but some of them we got to put on the back burner. Let's write it down and let's revisit it in a couple months, maybe next year, you know. And I just got to be realistic with it. Like, that sounds
Wow.
great, but we can't do it today. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and some, like I said before, some days it works fine, and that's the great answer for her, and she accepts it. And then other days,
Some
you
days,
don't
yeah.
want to believe it, babe, sis.
You don't
Not
want me to be
today,
great. Yeah.
right?
You don't want me
You a
to be a
hater.
millionaire by tomorrow.
It be your own wife that be hating on you.
Exactly,
And then you be like, it be your own people.
exactly.
Legit.
And that's fine. I've learned to take that on, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's fine. So you gotta say what you mean and mean what you say,
Say.
but don't shut down every idea because every idea is not something that had to be shut down. But as long as you can explain to me how we gonna navigate this space,
Yeah.
as long as you can show to me that we done sat here and we talked it out, and that's another thing, just having that communication in general. Because
Yes.
not all things are going to come together as a whole initially. Like you have to
Mm-hmm.
talk it out with somebody else because they think differently than you.
Yeah.
I think more
Exactly.
on the logical, the tangible. Whereas though she, like you said, just out here like, oh yes,
Risk
rainbow
taker.
butterflies. I
Yeah.
got all these ideas, but let's
Yes.
make it real. Like let's make
Yeah.
it apply to how it
Find
is
a happy
today.
medium. Yeah.
Exactly. So you have to have that level of communication. So if you ain't ready to answer 1,001 questions, it's gonna hurt you in the long run. That's the best way I can put it. You better ask them questions. If
Yeah.
you don't understand it, you better say, "Hey, explain it in another way so I can understand. Make it make sense to me." Because I ain't got enough. I ain't got
Yeah.
enough information. And
Yeah.
Right.
sometimes that's just how it
Now,
is. That's the only question I got. Like, I need more information. Explain it again.
exactly. Now, Shamika, for you, how she's like, why you bring me on the spot? For you, what is it like having a more, I guess we could say, neurotypical spouse? Do you feel like you guys are more on the compatible side? Do you feel like there's a balance, or we complement? Like, what is that like? Because y'all are like two different worlds.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that it balances me.
Mm.
I think that God knew what I needed.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
if there was two of me in a relationship, I don't know if that would
Oh
work,
my God.
right? And I'm being honest
No.
because I believe that I needed somebody who could literally sit me like, no, that doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense.
Yeah.
But somebody, see, the thing about it is there is such a respect there, and that's
Yes.
something that has to, and a trust. So that's
Mm-hmm.
something that has to be
Be
established.
established. Yep.
The trust and respect that I had for Chanel is something that had to build.
Mm-hmm.
And because
Yeah.
I respect and trust her, even when I'm like, girl, let me tell you, I can do this, I can do
Yeah.
that. And she be like, "Oh, okay." Her questioning me doesn't make me feel like I'm less than.
Right. It just makes
But
you think. Yeah.
also,
Who thought?
one of the big things is she never makes me feel like I'm a burden,
Mm.
right? So I feel like when you are opposite, sometimes what we go through can feel like a burden.
Yeah.
Chanel never makes me feel like a burden. She makes me feel like,
Wow.
no, that, and she's one of the first people that was like, no, that's actually like your superpower. Like that's your, like you think differently. And that's a great thing because
Yeah.
stuff that we think about and most people wouldn't think about
But never think about. Yeah.
because our brains work
Just
different.
wired very differently. Yeah.
So for me, sometimes it it makes me feel better that I have somebody that can hold me accountable.
Reason and yeah, exactly.
Because first of all, we like to spend money. I don't know if y'all know
Yeah.
about these, but I'm impulsive, right? And it's
Very.
something that I've gotten better
No
at.
logic. All
But
logic goes out the
even with
window.
none, so even with that, that's something that Chanel and I really had to work on in our relationship because
Yeah.
that could be a hindrance because Chanel
Oh
don't
yeah.
spend money like that.
Mm.
It has to make sense. She like to save. I say, well, I got it. Let me buy it. And it's like there's no logic between it.
Yeah.
So I think it took time, but I think it's probably the best thing for me. I don't think that somebody as creative, two creative people like the way we are,
Mm-hmm.
girl, we would have probably built whole nother White
We'd be
House
living in a
with this,
cardboard
that,
box.
and that. No, no,
The
it's not
street
good.
lights is our electricity, honey. Let me tell
No,
you.
it wouldn't be good. So my last question for Chanel is, how do you, so, and I'm just going to be very transparent as we wrap this up. Chanel and I had a conversation not too long ago, and the conversation was about the difference between being a caregiver and being a wife. And
Mm.
for a long time, I feel like Chanel had to stop being a wife and be a caregiver.
Wow.
And I think that that's sometimes what people have to navigate. And I'm saying this in a romantic relationship because there were times I couldn't even wash myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because not only was I dealing with mental stuff, I was also dealing with physical stuff, right? And so for people who don't know, I had multiple surgeries, right? So because I had multiple physical surgeries, what happened was Chanel ended up having to take care of me. And so there was some caregiving capabilities that happened that we had to navigate through, right? So she had to kind of choose between being a caregiver and being a wife, right? Because if
Mm.
and I'm just being funny, but this is serious. If you're in a nursing home or something like that and you're somebody's caregiver, you wiping somebody's tail. You can't get horny over you wiping some old lady's tail. So there were parts of Chanel that she had to cut off.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think that
Wow.
people don't realize the the work and
Mm.
the roles that sometimes have to be reversed. And
Hmm.
especially when it comes to marriage, we talk about this in sickness and a health thing, but a lot of people they mean physical sickness, not mental health sickness.
Not mental. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I just want to bring up that there are going to be times that, especially for people who have bipolar disorder, you may have to have somebody give you care and not necessarily, and that's something that you really have to communicate about And I only recognized it because I realized they were parts of Chanel that, she touchy feely, all that stuff was kind of cut
Mhm.
off. And I thought, I
Mhm.
was like, well, maybe, I mean, I know I gained a little, well, I didn't unbig my back a little bit now, but, I had gained some pounds. I was like, oh, maybe. But I realized, and as we were able to communicate, it had nothing to do with me personally.
Yeah.
It had
I
to
think
do with the
Chanel was
fact that
caring for you. Yeah.
she had to care for me,
Yeah.
and there were things that she could not participate in or even be a
In her
part of
own right.
until
Yeah.
I was at a good place. And
I
so I
love that.
just want to
Yeah.
say that sometimes you have to have that conversation with your mate. But my question for you, Chanel, is as a caregiver and as because when you're dealing with these things, yes, you're my wife, but you're technically giving care.
Mm-hmm.
How do you take care of yourself, and
Mm.
how does that look for you as a caregiver of somebody who has a mental diagnosis?
Yeah.
Mm. That's you hitting on them right. These last two, and let me step over here in this other corner because you showed off today. Um, uh, for that one, honestly, for a long time I wasn't. There was no care because I didn't have it to give. So in a sense, it was like putting yourself to the back because you want to make sure that your person is good. Um, I don't know, like that's something that I still struggle with to today because this is a very recent conversation that we've had. Um, very recent exposures of it because who wants to tell that person that, like, because I don't want to tell it to you to make you feel bad, like I so that's never the intention. So to expose, I hadn't. So it's something new that I'm still trying to navigate that space. Trying to honestly just figure out what makes me tick, like get back to what makes Chanel happy with things. um that sometimes it's hard. It's hard to navigate that space. It's hard to understand it because, for one, you don't want to feel like you're selfish. You don't want to feel like you're letting that person down, because if you said that you was going to be there for that person, you don't want to feel like you're letting them down. And so trying to navigate that space is still very new. Um, but small things that I, have done and continue to do, and I've been doing it prior to, but I never really recognized it as something as far as, like self-care type thing. I enjoy, we got dogs, so I enjoy being outside. I enjoy walking around and stuff out there. I like to plant. Like who would have thought? But I like to plant. I like to garden. So I do things like that. I like
I love
cutting grass. I like
that.
all things garden related at this stage. It just gives me time just to be in my own thoughts. Like I like just the being outside, being in the peace of the thought process. Like whatever I'm thinking, that's how I'm thinking and what I'm feeling or whatever have you. But beyond that, it's like I said, it's still new, still something that I got to navigate through. Haven't haven't really done it before now. So when I walked into, I ain't gonna say, I made a decision to do the caregiver thing. It wasn't something that was like, oh, you have to do this. No, no, I chose that um, because I chose my person. So I recognized and understood and understand to this day that this disease is not my person. It does not make my person who they are. It is something, unfortunately, that my person disability has. It doesn't break her. It doesn't make me see her any differently. It just lets me know that my vows or my commitment to that person is in full effect, honestly. It's for the better, it's for the worse, it's for the sickness, and it's for the health. Because we've been through it all already.
Yeah.
And we still young, is if we want to call it what it's called. Most time you envision when they say in sickness and in health that you're in your 70s and your 80s and your person is on their deathbed. That's what you envision.
Yes.
Tell you that that's in your sickness and health, but you don't recognize that, like y'all said, that's the physical health. Is not the mental state of the health.
Oh.
So having to navigate that space and recognize that early, it was something that's like, wow. But again, like I said, I chose my person. Would I redo it and choose anybody else? No. I chose my person. That's my person, and I'm going to rock with her. So that
Learn
meant,
not to step aside.
Exactly that part, Bobby. Whitney and Bobby. But it's like with me making that decision to stick beside my person, that meant that I had to give them my all. And now I'm recognizing in order to give you my all at this stage, I have to take care of myself too now. In order for me to be able to continue to give you my all. Because if I don't have it to give, how I'm gonna give it to you? Like how I'm gonna help you if I don't have it to give?
Yeah.
And like like you've told me, and that I'm learning like I can't pour from an empty cup.
Mhm.
So now I'm having to navigate those spaces, bless you. I'm having to navigate those spaces and reflect and figure out how to pour back into my cup in order for me to be there to pour into you,
Yeah.
and I think that that's a hard space to navigate sometimes
Yeah.
because just knowing that you got to take a moment to pull away just to figure out what you want to do that's going to help
Yeah.
you. It's a hard space to navigate right now.
Yeah, and so I triggered that question just because one of the things that was said to me was I always am on like Facebook or the internet and I'm always giving Chanel appreciation, right? And if anybody knows anything about Chanel, she ain't really no Facebook person. She'll get on there to support me, but she not posting nothing, I
Sis don't
think
even know how to post.
she barely know how to post, right?
Ah,
And so somebody said to me, "Well, she don't really post you, and she, bop, bop, bop." And I'm like, "That's where the value is. Somebody posting you." And so I said, part of the reason why I knew I had to get better for myself, yes, but also this person has given their all to me.
yeah.
She deserves for me to give my all to her as well.
Whatever that looks like. Yeah.
And so for me, that means that I have to get myself in a position where she doesn't have to be my caregiver. She can be
Mhm.
back being my wife. Now, when I was navigating these spaces, that's one thing. But when I'm knowingly allowing myself to continue to be in a position where I'm not taking care of myself so somebody else can take care of me, that's wild. That's wild.
Yeah.
So I feel like sometimes we get stuck in a pattern where we don't want to get better because we feel like we don't have to. But even if you're not
Mm.
getting better for yourself, sometimes it's you got to understand you got to get better for the people who are supporting you. It's not okay to take advantage of that. And so I have a deep appreciation for Chanel because, like she said, she's giving me her all, so she deserves that back.
Yeah.
And also, she deserves for me to pour into her in the same way. Now, I'm not saying we've been together over 10 years, so this has been over a span of
Right.
12, 13 years. So, of course, it hasn't always been a caregiver, but I know we talked about it a lot here, but that's not how our relationship has been.
Right.
But everybody deserves that appreciation. And I think even for you, Anais, you deserve appreciation just for navigating this space on your own.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think sometimes when we talk about giving flowers, we got to give flowers to the people who are navigating these spaces by themselves.
Yep.
Mhm.
Because if Chanel is telling you the spaces have been crazy with me and her, imagine being by yourself.
Man.
So I want to give you your flowers, Anais,
Thank
because
you
I
so much.
want you to know that you are amazingly strong. But not just that, you are teaching other people how to be strong.
Yep.
Mm.
And not just strength and, oh, I'm hiding my pain, but no, I'm exposing it.
Posing.
Because there is strength in exposure.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
that's what this podcast is about.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Experience.
Chanel, I'm always going to give you your flowers because I love you. I love you. It was amazing. I didn't cry at all during this episode. It's really good.
I was just holding back.
But
Do it. Don't do it.
no,
Do
but
it.
I love you. And this is so important, right? Because I feel like everybody deserves somebody, and I'm not talking about romantically all the time. They deserve somebody who can hear them and understand them and not
Yeah.
judge them.
Yeah.
And so for anybody
Yeah.
who's listening, listening, if you are that person, understand that a person who has bipolar disorder goes through so much in their mind in the blink of an eye.
Literally.
I literally have probably had 55,000 thoughts while I'm sitting here talking. And I had to navigate. My mind does not turn off ever.
Never stops. Yeah.
And that alone, navigating that is something that most people will never understand. So
Yeah.
although we hear, you see the stuff on TV, you see the stuff, but you judge them because you feel like, oh, they did something negative, but you don't know what happened to get them there.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I ask that people just give grace,
Give grace.
give grace, because you have no idea what people are going through and the type of
Yeah.
torture. If I can be honest with you, sometimes being
And
bipolar is
mind.
torture.
Yeah. Biggest battle.
And I still have to be a mom. I still have to be a wife. I still have to be a friend. I still have to be a sister. I still have to be a daughter. I still have to be all of these things
Yep.
outside of the fact that I suffer daily with my own mind.
Yep.
And so, to all my bipolar people out there, I want you to know that I am proud of you and that you
Absolutely.
will find your community. This is your community.
Yeah.
Feel free to reach out to us. We would love to have you on the show. If you want to be on the
Hmm.
show, please email. I'll put it in the podcast details. Anais, where can they find you on Instagram, Facebook, everywhere? Where can they find you, girl?
Well, as of right now, you can find me at Beauty by Annabelle J. However, there's a little rebranding going on. So we'll be sure to update you when that information is readily available. But right now,
Yes,
it's Beauty by ANABELJ on all platforms.
Yes,
yes,
ma'am.
yes. And you can find me at Shamika Speaks on Instagram. You can find me on Shamika Speaks or Shamika Williams on Facebook. But more than that, I did do a private group for the Being Bipolar podcast. So I
Mhm.
will be more active in there soon so that we can really establish this community.
Yeah.
Chanel, I thank you. We're not going to ask her her details because she don't even know them.
I don't know them, and I'm not going to check them. I'm not gonna lie. Give them to you, and I'll respond from there. Don't
Oh
send me none
man.
because
Oh,
y'all be upset because I don't respond to nothing.
So I will say thank you. And I will say that I really would like to do our next episode on parenting within bipolar disorder.
mm.
God gave it to me as I was sitting here. And so that's going to be interesting.
Oh yeah.
But we are so thankful for all of you tuning in. We thank you. If you have any questions, comments, you want to be on the show, please let us know. We love you and we are so happy that you tuned in. We will see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye.